This week on the Droids, we talk about Gina Carano being removed from The Mandalorian, Cara Dune no longer in the next season of Mando after Lucasfilm's announcement, and we talk to a first-time Star Wars watcher and hear his reactions to watching the 1977 film for the very first time. All that and more this week on the Droids. Welcome back to the Droids. You're looking for a Star Wars podcast. Alongside Ryan and Chris, I am Mike, and I don't know how we can talk about anything else. The very first thing we have to get into is the biggest news. After many, many times where there have been questions about some of the viewpoints posted by Gina Carano on social media, she has been removed of her duties as Marshal of the Outer Rim of Cara Dune, and she will no longer be in The Mandalorian. We all thought that this might be coming back in December when they announced the upcoming series, and they said Rangers of the New Republic. Were like, well, why aren't they just selling this as Cara Dune's story? There had been a rumor about a Cara Dune spinoff. It felt like there were spinoffs in the works for Mandalorian characters because of the success of the series, and that was a bit obvious that something was wrong. That there was concern that they didn't.
They had been talking about a Cara Dune spinoff from the start, before Mandalorian even premiered.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a long time coming. Some would say too long. Some would say that Lucasfilm has waited too long to do this, considering. And she's been posting aside from so extremely offensive things, which was like kind of the last straw. With for Lucasfilm to fire her, but like misinformation that's extremely dangerous for people if they believe it, regarding masks and things like that.
Sure.
So yeah, it's been a long time coming, and they say the old saying is when someone tells you who they are, believe them. And for someone who on a television show couldn't act her way out of a paper bag, we have to believe that she couldn't act as anything but herself on social media, which is seemingly a real jerk.
Yeah. Well, I think we all forgived a lot of the poor acting because we're like, all right, she's doing her thing on the show. It's not great, but that's all right. And then it's harder to kind of forgive that, and you put into stark contrast what she's saying.
Right.
Like, I guess I will pay attention to the things that aren't very good in what she does. But that's the secondary issue to the things that she was saying.
Yeah.
We don't need to pass on everything she said, but I think what you talked about, Ryan, is if it's dangerous information, that alone should be enough of a reason to dismiss
I think Disney put it best when they said abhorrent is the word, right? That's the
abhorrent. Yeah,
abhorrent. I can't speak.
I don't know who Ed Horrent is.
I don't know what I said. What is it?
Is he friends with Ronald Araki? Ed Horrent.
When are we getting Ronald?
Disney said it best by making up a word. I can't speak. But we don't need to get into the content, but I think, but kind of a little bit, like you said, like Disney should have kind of been on this sooner, and the fact that she wasn't really in those digital upfronts that they did, to me seems like this was going to be a problem that they were just not going to address and just kind of do nothing about it without making an announcement. I think we would have Rangers kind of would have get pushed down the line, I think. And then I think it would have just kind of fizzled out. And the next time we saw these digital upfronts, I think they would have been like, "Oh yeah, no, we're not making that."
Like, I wonder about Justice League Part 2. There is no Justice League Part 2.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Disney was trying to kind of just get away with it, but then things came to a head with recent events. So then I think they had to make it a statement to say that she is not employed and she will not be employed.
She was also dropped by her agency. She no longer has representation.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, which is what's that? UTA? Is that United Talents
UTA?
Agency?
Yeah.
That's they dropped her, so she no longer has representation, which means she's going to find her place in the conservative movie making business. So likely some faith-based films in the future for her. But I think the last thing to talk about
Kirk Cameron will be making a movie together soon.
Well, very much so. I look forward to her beating up Kirk Cameron. That'll be fun.
Wow.
But
Oh my God. Wrestling with your faith.
Oh boy, that's it. It's happening.
Yeah. Wow.
You know
Of
what?
course.
We should cut this part out because we got to get that. We got to get on that.
We got to take that.
I don't think that any one of us on this podcast could, even if they gave us a bunch of money, make that movie in good faith.
Oh.
In Good Faith, the movie about making wrestling with your faith.
That's the documentary.
Yeah, it's the Heart of Darkness, right?
It's the Hearts of Darkness.
One of the things that bothered me was the social media kind of perspective on this. I have a tendency to be reactive in a lot of this, and I certainly was bothered by what people were saying. But it just made me think that there's always someone who's going to be like, let me take the side of this person because I believe in their views, and that there's never a line that anyone can cross anymore. There's it's in terms of there is for her to be removed from her job, but there's always going to be a group of people who are like, no, I agree. Or to take it from the perspective.
You mean that like they don't think that any line should mean someone should be fired, kind of?
Yeah, there's nothing that can be done.
Yeah,
because everyone has free speech, and you can use your free speech however you want. Well, no, that's not what free speech is.
Yeah,
you don't get to go into a school
argument.
or an employer and yell whatever you want. Or is the classic thing, you can't go into a movie theater and yell fire and have that be okay. You can say whatever you want.
It's a bad faith argument people always make about free speech because it just means that she can't get arrested.
Yeah.
For saying it. And it's like, that's true.
You
but
can't
it's
be
like,
in prison.
It doesn't
for
mean
your
that
beliefs.
people won't react to it. It doesn't mean that there won't be consequences to what you say.
There's
like,
consequences to what people say. And yes, if you can't go to a workplace, like any HR training would show that you can't go to a workplace and say these things in a public forum because you represent the company that you work for in or out of the office for most of the cases. And so, yeah, it's like,
so is it within her
consequence.
legal rights to spread misinformation and say like insanely offensive things like out loud? It is within her legal rights, and it is within her legal rights for her employers to say, we don't want to work with you anymore. Yes. It's like it doesn't make any sense for people to think that like it's going against her free speech because she says stupid stuff.
Yeah.
For her to get fired.
And yet then there's the trending cancel Disney Plus, which I just find hilarious because today they announced they had 95 million paid subscribers, and I think by next quarter it'll be over 100 million, regardless of the one-day cancel Disney Plus trend. All of this is just going to be forgotten very quickly, and we'll all move on to the next thing, and conservatives will run into whatever they want to be outraged by.
If you're listening to this in the year 3000, it was a blip on the radar. Star Wars 12, 13, 14 were awesome.
And you know what? If you are so offended that Gina Carano was fired, go ahead and cancel Disney Plus because I don't need to hear your opinions about the Mandalorian anymore. And you won't watch it. And it's like you can go listen to her episode of the Joe Rogan podcast where she talks about how she was wronged.
I love the people who react. Oh, I'll torrent it. I'm still watching the show. I'm not giving them my money, but I'm going to watch it, and I'll probably buy the merchandise.
Hurting their bottom line.
Yeah. But with that in mind and opinions on The Mandalorian, we're going to give ours. How do we think they will dispatch of Cara Dune? Will it be a mention? Will it be a Poochie, if you will, as we posted all across social, and she's just going to die on the way home to her home planet, which, again, Alderaan was her home planet. So I liked someone had a theory that she traveled back in time, got to Alderaan, couldn't leave the planet before the Death Star blew it up. I think that's reasonable. How we think they're going to address this? Or will it just be something that Mando never ever says?
I think we'll never hear her name again.
Yeah, I mean, I think realistically, what's going to happen here is we're just never going to hear of them again because they've kind of built in a little escape too, because we'll have the Book of Boba, presumably a time leap with the next season of Mando, and I do think it'll be like, well, that planet blew up, or just she's just not on that wavelength. Now, I hope that doesn't hurt her associations with like Carl Weathers and things like that. I mean, I hope they're able to come back because I know that they were kind of building up a little grouping there. But I got the vibe that they were going to throw Bill Burr and her together in that Rangers show, and I feel like
it was going to be her, Bill Burr, Shane McGillis.
Yeah, it felt
yeah.
it felt a little bit like Disney was like, okay, these are the episodes for this audience, and they were there. It felt like they were trying to get away with a little bit, but then they got called out. So I don't know if I can expect Rangers to happen at all. Really,
I'd kind of be excited to see Rangers happen if they're like, well, you know what, we still want to do the show. Back to the drawing board. Let's figure out something else. And I apologize, I can't remember the actor's name, but the actor who plays one of the rebel pilots.
Yes, the two rebel pilots, along with Dave Filoni. Yeah, no, that would be a shame if they missed their opportunity because of this. And that's
I truly think it's just like they won't mention her again. We'll still see Carl Weathers. We'll still see the rebel pilots.
I think
like,
you're right. Oh, I
think it's just like it. I honestly think people were overplaying her part in the show.
It was such a small part. It in the scope of things, and also it's like, would they want to bring it back with all the weight now that it carries? Like,
well, but they overplayed her clearly because they wanted to do a series. Clearly, they wanted to do a series with her, even if her role was small in this. They felt like she was meaningful.
She had cachet. For sure.
I agree with you, Chris. I think they will eventually just scrap it, but I'd be sad to see that. I'm like, I kind of want to just see what that show would be.
Yeah.
With new actors or new characters, and let's see what they can do.
Yeah, maybe it'll happen. I mean, they only announced 11 shows, so I'm sure.
I'm sure they've got at least 10 more. Coming in.
Maybe they can have a Rangers show where they're like, all these new recruits that are like, ever since our captain was fired for disorderly conduct,
right? What if
we have to find our own way?
What if they're Rangers on the forest moon of Endor?
Maybe leftover ones.
Like a park ranger.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
it's
just
now I see where you're
it's
going.
just literally them like picking up litter and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
I would love
keep Endor clean.
Nick Offerman as a rebel ranger with like bonding with Ewoks. He doesn't talk to anybody but the Ewoks. That sounds great. I watch that show.
Yeah.
Go outside and stand in nature with your Ewok pal.
Yeah, that sounds lovely.
Yeah. See? Well, there you go, Disney. Why we give this stuff away for free on the pod?
My God, this in our wrestling movie? Are you joking?
A lot of quality ideas. Well, follow us on social media, where we're not going to be involved in hashtags like we talked about. But follow us Twitter, DroidsPod, Facebook, The Droids Podcast, Instagram, DroidsPod, and on YouTube, DroidsPod, Playthrough Fallen Order, you know the drill. Of course, TikTok, DroidsPod, where we are getting some fun stuff. Guys, I got to ask, how do you say Daniel Craig?
Obviously, it's Daniel Craig.
I say Daniela Craig.
It's too bad that Sam, original Sam, isn't here. Because he would answer, because several of the TikTok comments have been asking that Craig is not the proper way to pronounce his last name. Maybe there's a British pronunciation. I don't know. Craig? I don't know.
If you know, write us
Email us. Email us droidspod@gmail.com.
Or to one of those like pronunciation MP3s where it's like Craig.
Yeah,
Craig.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to do. Yeah, with the computer voice.
Well, please follow us there. Rate and review us on iTunes. If you have a chance, that really helps boost us up as a podcast, get more listeners, get more people in here. And we're about to talk with Sam Levitt for his first reaction to watching Star Wars A New Hope. We heard from him in the last week's podcast about what he knew of Star Wars before watching, which was a great one to kind of get a little sense of who he is and what he was in for. Really good conversation with him. Excited to have him along the way to talk about all of his thoughts on these movies. So let's take a listen to our conversation with Sam Levitt after seeing Star Wars A New Hope for the very first time. We welcome back to the Droids Pod Sam Levitt. And Sam, we're thrilled to have you here. You've seen a Star Wars. You've watched A New Hope just last night, and we're ready to talk about it. I am on the edge of my seat. I have a lot riding on this.
Stakes are high.
I mean, I asked a lot of you to watch these movies, and I feel like my reputation in your eyes is on the line. Maybe not with just this one, but the next several films you may watch for us. So, all right, let's start it off. Just paint the picture for us. How'd you do last night in watching the movie?
Okay, so let me paint the picture, and Mike and everybody else, thanks for having me on. I really embarked on quite the journey last night. So let me paint the picture of what we were doing. So I was sitting in my living room here at my apartment. I have a roommate, and she was very excited to watch the first movie with me. She's seen all the Star Wars and was pumped about it, said, okay, let's do it. We're going to watch it. Great. So we sat down on the couch. She sat on the right side. I sat on the left side. And the first thing that happened is we turned it on. We went to Disney Plus, and the opening scroll came on, right? And I was kind of looking at my phone as the scroll was going down, and she stopped it and said, "You got to pay attention to this." So
I love
Wait, so hold on.
I love
so
your
you're on
roommate.
the left side.
I'm on the left side.
I see
Okay,
the left
she
side.
She said, you got to pay attention to this. So we stopped it. We made sure we went back. I read it. Okay. Then we went on. I watched about an hour and 20 minutes before and I was debating whether to tell you guys this or not. But before I fell asleep, we both fell asleep. It was late. It was past the 11 p.m. hour. So then I woke up with about 10 minutes left. And when I woke up, I stopped it, and then I went to sleep. And then I woke up this morning, and this morning I went back to where I fell asleep, watched the rest, and finished it. So I debated whether I should be totally honest with my experience, and I thought I should.
Unvarnished opinion is what we want.
Yeah, and I'll say this. I don't think I fell asleep because I was bored. I was just tired. Okay. So
you don't have to explain yourself. We're all over 30 on this podcast.
Okay.
Like it was past 11. I don't even know why you started the movie that late.
Well, wait,
so that
I have
was
to
my
ask,
experience.
what's your roommate's name?
Her name is Krista.
You don't need to say her whole name. I just want to say Krista is an honorary droid for having you put away your phone and telling you to really dig in on it. So a lot of tip, as we say here on the pod, a tip of the cat, because that's our running joke here. Tip of the cat to Krista for having you do that.
Joke is a generous term.
I will say, though, I've seen the Star Wars probably thousands of times, and if you asked me what was in that scroll, I probably couldn't give you 3 words.
Really, Chris? I'm shocked
Isn't it?
to
It's
hear
a time. Wait,
Yeah.
it's a time of civil war.
I don't know.
You don't know
I
anything
don't
about
know
the
either.
plans? All right. So let's get back to it. All right, Sam. So tell us your reaction to the movie. I would think that it wasn't maybe holding your attention, even if you were tired at the end or in the point where you did fall asleep. Were you enjoying what you were watching to the point you remember, and then where you picked up? Tell us what you thought.
I did. I enjoyed it. My biggest takeaways in the overall sense would be, number one, it's a really, and I don't know if it was redone or I don't know what the word would be, remastered.
Special edition is the word. Yeah,
but for a
You
movie,
have no idea
for
what
a
you
movie,
just stepped into.
yeah, for a movie that was released in 1977, it really looks good. That was my first thought when I was watching. It was like, wow, this doesn't look like it's from 1977. And even some of the special effects and the weird alien type creatures,
they hold up.
Yeah, I mean, really, really good. So that was a big thought of mine throughout the whole thing. I enjoyed it. I liked the storyline. I will admit that at the beginning and towards the middle, it could just be me, I found it confusing. I wasn't sure exactly who these people were, where they're from, or the concept of this galaxy, and everybody's on different planets, and then you have, Luke's planet, and then you have the starship where Princess Leia is originally, and then Darth Vader and the Sand People, and then you got old Ben Kenobi. I'm like, who is he? So there, to me, as a first-time Star Wars viewer, there were a lot of things to understand. And I didn't quite understand the entire situation. But by the end, and quite honestly, after I did a little bit of reading on it afterwards, I understand it much better now. But overall, Mike and everybody else, I enjoyed it. I did. I especially liked the battle scenes with the lasers and all that. So while I fell asleep, full disclosure, I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to seeing the rest. But I think I enjoyed it more once I understood it a little bit more, if that makes sense.
Can I ask when you fell asleep? 'Cause since you had to go back, like what part was it?
I fell asleep. They've Luke, Han Solo, 3CPO, R2D2. They are already on are already on the on. I guess it would be the Death Star. Does that make sense? Like they've already left and landed.
Oh,
and
it makes sense to us.
And they're in that control room.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
This was around the part where Luke and Han Solo are putting on the stormtrooper outfit. Around there is where I fell asleep, which was like I think about an hour 20 minutes in.
Yeah.
It was around there.
Well, but going back to what you said at the beginning, I do feel like the beginning for the average viewer, for anyone, when the droids are just on their own on Tatooine and it's R2-D2 and C-3PO, that can be a bit, they're talking a lot about the galaxy, they're talking about being lost, you're like, what am I in for with this? I can see why that part after they leave the first ship can be a bit slow. And in the movie in general, there are portions that are a lot slower. I think the final third act certainly has the pacing that has probably set the tone for the rest of action cinema for the next 40 years after it came out. But I can understand that earlier portion. Did you have a character that you liked best out of the group?
That's a good question.
Well, while you think about that,
I think it was Obi-Wan Kenobi.
All right.
I think it was him. I liked his energy. I liked his vibe. He's certainly the good guy. I was disappointed when he supposedly was killed by Darth Vader. I kept waiting for him to reappear in some way after that, which he didn't.
We won't give any spoilers, but this isn't the last of Obi-Wan.
I'm sure. Sure. Can I make one more general observation too? So towards the end of the movie, I kept waiting to see the famous scene and line, Luke, I am your father. I kept waiting for it, and then the movie ended, and it never came. And it wasn't until then that I realized it is not from the original Star Wars. So that was a big takeaway, too.
Funny.
But I think Obi-Wan Kenobi, he was probably my favorite. I liked Han Solo. He's kind of got that interesting back and forth with Leia.
I thought you might enjoy him because in a lot of ways, and we're not the only ones to say this, but he's kind of the voice of the audience, and the voice of the audience who's skeptical about all of this. As kind of later on, it's like they call it mumbo jumbo in some way, where he's just like, I haven't seen anything in the galaxy that tells me there's some all powerful force that solves any of my problems. And he makes it a little more palatable to be like, hey, there's a lot of crazy weird stuff happening, and he's that voice.
Right. And that's the other thing too that I think I was a little bit confused about. And this piece of confusion doesn't necessarily go away by the end of the movie. Mm-hmm. I don't really understand like what the Force actually is.
Well,
it seems like kind of like a religion or a world. Right. Like that part of it I find weird.
The good thing is they expand on that, and it's almost like something that you could say somebody in 1977 wanted more and wanted to learn more, and they took that note to heart.
Well, it may be a surprise to you that they explain truly what the Force was at one point, and everybody just got mad.
they overdid it
for them.
Yes,
people wanted to know what the Force was, but not too much. They just got mad about it.
Don't put too many ideas in his heads for the future movies, because you don't want to be thinking about what everybody else feels, as sometimes people on this podcast, such as myself, do. Sam, when we talked about James Earl Jones, his first entrance is a pretty dramatic one that is pretty much entered into the annals of history of cinema when he first walks in. How did you feel about his presence and him as a villain, as Darth Vader in this movie?
That's a good question, Mike. It took, of course I knew in the back of my head that he's the voice of Darth Vader, but it took me a while for it to register in the movie to like remind myself that it was him. I guess what I'm trying to say is I didn't think about it very much. Which I don't know why.
Good, though. That's kind of good.
Probably because you don't see him. Like, he's like the voice is coming from a costume. I mean, I remember actually thinking to myself at some point, oh yeah, that's James Earl Jones. So that was interesting. And I said on the original podcast, I'm a big James Earl Jones fan. I'm a big Field of Dreams fan. So he holds a special place in my heart. But no, you know what? It's not something I thought a lot about during the whole movie at all.
What did you think of the character, even aside from James Earl Jones? Just what is it meant to be the epitome of evil in that role?
It's funny. I think my idea of Darth Vader, what he was, I didn't realize that he had so many lines. Like, I didn't realize that he was such a talker. I thought that Darth Vader would be this kind of ominous presence that appears every now and then. I had him much more villain-like. And to me, he doesn't, I don't think he gives off that villain vibe. Is that weird? Like, he's around a lot. He's also got these other people that he's talking to that seem to have some sort of, sway over him. Like, I don't know what that little skinny old guy's name is in the room with him all the time. Actually, that's one character that's in it a lot. I don't know what his name is still.
We dubbed
Grand
him
Moff Tarkin.
Yeah. We dubbed him in the last episode after our conversation as Moonlight Grand Moff Tarkin, as Moonlight Graham. So, as following the Field of Dreams conversation. Actually, I mean, and he does, that's the end of him because he was on the Death Star.
Oh, right,
so
right.
No more of him for Vader to report to.
Right.
It is interesting to point out, that Vader, he's not kind of just like this guy they bring in to scare everybody. He's kind of got to politics a little bit with everyone else.
Yeah, he's also this kind of fringe dude in the Empire where they're like, enough with this guy. He's there with Grand Moff Tarkin, but they say enough of your sorcery. He's kind of like a dude that they're like, what's this guy still doing here?
Right.
Then he chokes that dude, of course. There is this aspect to him where it's I think people wonder what his place in the ranks is supposed to be.
Right. Well,
he's a Merlin type.
Right. That's what I found interesting about it was he has that moment where he's choking the guy with whatever force he has. But then there's another moment later on, or there's a couple where whatever the guy's name is that you just said, I can't remember. He says to Darth Vader something along the lines of this better work. This is I don't know. I thought Darth was going to be a much more ominous presence that just comes in and out every once in a while. And he had again, my thing was he had way more lines and way more screen time than I thought he would.
I think the ominous will be brought up to another level in the next movie. He's still going to have a lot of lines and a lot of presence, probably continuing to be more prominent than you feel like. And actually, this story in a lot of ways, he was such an iconic character that so much of what has come since Star Wars has still revolved around Darth Vader. So there's a lot more to come is what I'm trying to say.
Part of me wonders if back then that we have James Earl Jones, we got to just use him, sneak some more lines in there because the mouth's not moving on the costume. So let's get him to say as much as we can.
Well, Sam, let's look at the action. Favorite action scene for you? I guess within that, there's so much great action. Was your favorite some of the lightsaber work, or was it more of the space battles?
Definitely not the lightsaber work. I thought that was pretty lame.
It is at that stage.
I don't know what was going on during the Obi-Wan Darth Vader little battle there, but that was pretty pathetic. But the rest of the battle stuff, when they're rescuing Princess Leia and the stormtroopers are coming after them and, they're in the hallway, then they go down to the garbage chute, all that stuff. I thought those were really good. Those were the moments again where I was like, wow, this movie is from 1977. It doesn't look like it. This is, again, it was that vibe to it for me. So I liked the whatever those weapons are they're using, blasters, whatever they call them.
Yeah.
I like those. I like those scenes, but specifically the lightsaber scene was left a lot to be desired for me.
Well, they make up for that, to say the least. Not only in the next couple of movies, but especially in the prequels and then the sequels. I mean, everybody loves lightsabers so much. I think in 1977, there's always this story of the train coming at people when they first saw a movie in 1920 something, and they all reacted like the train was actually there. In 1977, when you've never seen special effects even remotely like that lightsaber battle, while not incredible, was just how are they even doing this? How are they fighting with lights like this?
Yeah, there was talk of applause in theaters in the first shot of this movie. When the Star Destroyer goes over the head, that people gasped and clapped. So it's, different times.
Absolutely.
Sam, I'm gonna being that you said about how it was made in 1977 but it doesn't look like it. If you had to guess the budget of this film, and for reference, I'll say that in 1989, Field of Dreams cost $15 million.
Mm-hmm.
What would you guess the budget of Star Wars was in 1977?
Knowing absolutely nothing about this
We won't hold
kind of
this again.
stuff.
I'm just.
I mean, so Field of Dreams is 15 million. That had a lot of weird stuff in it. I don't know, maybe 6 million for.
All right.
First, I'm just saying because, I'm just thinking about what it would have been a dozen years earlier.
Sure.
I mean, I don't. I have no idea. So, but the way you're framing it, I'm assuming it's actually way less than Field of Dreams. So I'll go 5-6 million. Is that in the ballpark?
It is in the ballpark. I think I honestly don't know for sure, but I think it was somewhere around 11 million. Does that sound right,
Interesting.
Chris?
Yep,
Mike?
I was googling. Yeah.
Yeah, 11 million, which is still not a lot a month back then.
No. Well, and a lot of Sam, a lot of the charm of Star Wars is that a lot of these set pieces, these costumes were kind of pulled together from other movies and then just, redecorated to make them and make them fit. As you can kind of tell in that early scene in the cantina, the bar that they're in, they just have a guy who's a devil and a werewolf and they're just fitting them in as aliens or an Ant-Man.
There's that one dude whose head is clearly on a stick.
Yep.
But that charm is kind of really stayed with people, and they want that. They want that almost halfway lived in sort of world that's been created in the first Star Wars, and it's carried through.
Mm. Oh, one more weird thing that I thought about a lot. Chewbacca, very interesting character. Of course, I knew what Chewbacca was going into this. That was kind of the cool thing. Just a side note, seeing all these characters that I already know their names, like R2-D2, Chewbacca, Darth Vader. I mean, all these different references. What was a really good one, and I said it at the time to my roommate, was when Obi-Wan gets the stormtrooper to do what he wants, repeat him in the car. Yeah. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
I was oh, that's why they call it a Jedi mind trick. I was okay, I've said that on the air before, not knowing what on earth not having no idea of what it actually is, okay? And I was oh, that's it. That's why they call it a Jedi mind trick. So there were things like that. So Chewbacca, really quick. I didn't realize. I thought he was going to be some monster type, and he ends up being this really, kind of scared big thing. And then she Leia calls him a rug or something. It was just interesting to see
Walking
these characters
carpet,
that in my head I thought were so different than what they actually are in the movie.
Did you think at the end that he should have received a medal like everyone else?
I thought
you may not
so.
have noticed. You may not have seen.
Oh,
that he
you mean
didn't get a medal.
Chewbacca?
Yeah.
I don't. You know what? All I can remember is Han and Luke on that stage. I don't even remember. I mean, I could have just missed
Chewbacca
it.
was with them that whole time.
It's a point of conversation for people for the past 40 years about Star Wars that he did not receive a medal, though he deserved one.
I would say he did. Yeah.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that never made sense to most of us, and they think about that and kind of remember what the fans thought in some of the later movies. You talked a lot about the comedy of what you like in movies, and comedy in general is kind of more your pace and what you like. What do you think of the comedy in this? What do you think of Han Solo's, some of his bits, his reactions, some of the humor that even Chewbacca, C-3PO, R2-D2 brought?
I enjoyed it. I was not expecting this movie to have so much of that, so much banter, especially between Han and Leia. I wasn't expecting when the movie first starts and you see Princess Leia and she's, getting arrested or whatever happens. I wasn't expecting for her character to turn so, so sharp and kind of aggressive in a way. I wasn't, her character evolves in a really interesting way. You don't, you just then her and Han start going back and forth. Like she's really sharp edged, you know. And I think that was really interesting. You know, all the like the one liners she has, all the one liners Han has. Obviously, 3CPO is like funny in an overall sense in his own way. I like that part of it. I was not expecting there to be so much. It's funny because the movie is so advanced in so many ways, I'm sure, for 1977, but it still has that really corny humor about it that you find in so many old movies. Like just the dialogue and the cadence of it and like the rhythm of it is so like 70s movie to me. But the movie, like we're talking about, was so advanced, I'm sure, in so many ways. So that part's pretty interesting, you know. But I liked it. I liked the comedic, you know, banter of it for sure.
I love hearing your reaction to Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia because I think she's a character who at that time was ahead of its time. You know, she's not a damsel. They can't even make the point that she's like, this is some rescue. You know, she's not being rescued by them. She has to almost rescue them herself. And that was a part of why she's a character that people have loved for so many years, because she was not this standard female character in a movie, which typically puts a position where they have to be kind of not subservient, but secondary to men. And she's just one of the three. And that was something that now maybe doesn't feel as innovative, but it was at the time. Well, also, I guess we haven't talked enough about the protagonist of the entire movie, though, Luke Skywalker. How did you feel about his call to adventure, his leaving his moisture farm with his aunt and uncle getting burned up there really early on in the story? Did you feel a connection to Luke on his journey into, as we say many times, a larger world?
Did I feel a connection to Luke? I don't think so.
Oh no!
He's fine. No. He's fine. You know, geez. I felt more of a connection to him when it's clear that his uncle and Obi-Wan are lying to him. Like, I found that interesting because obviously I know in the back of my head already that Darth is his father. So I'm like, okay, this totally makes sense. Like, oh, that's kind of sad that, you know, you feel bad for him in a sense because clearly they're hiding something that they've hid from him for a really long time. Did I feel a big connection to Luke? I can't say that I did. You know, he's fine. He's fine. He ends up being the hero. I don't find that he has much personality. He's kind of like the pretty boy. I don't know. He wasn't my. I didn't find him the most impressive out of all the characters. Like I was way more enamored with Princess Leia, with Han Solo, with I don't know, some of the more interesting. I don't know. It just seems to like kind of. I don't know if I'm. You know what? I don't want to make any grand proclamations because maybe I'm getting like Star Wars fans everywhere mad.
No,
but I wouldn't.
Ryan's just.
Oh, you got a target on your back now, my man.
But I wouldn't say that Luke was my favorite character out of this movie.
Sure.
Like I would put Leia above him, Han above him, Obi-Wan above him. Like I don't know. It's not the most entertaining one, but
yeah.
I mean, obviously he was like clearly, you know, in that 1977 mode, like the heartthrob of the movie, I'm sure.
Right.
And obviously that's kind of his role. I think.
He kind of moves the plot along.
Right.
It's almost like he's a blank slate
respect.
that people for years have been like placing too much of themselves onto him.
Right.
Ryan is alluding to some things, Sam, that you're not aware of, just in terms of the way that fans react to the character over the years. So those listeners who know it will understand where Ryan's coming from.
Yeah, Sam, everything you said is accurate.
Yes. Well, I do wonder. It's interesting you talk about him as the heartthrob because really, I think Harrison Ford. I mean, this is peak Harrison Ford in terms of his attractiveness,
possibly the most handsome a person has ever been.
and the reception was in that way, and it's probably a big part of why that character, alongside Indiana Jones, are kind of the things that people think of when they think of Harrison Ford. But from that, I'm kind of curious, what did you think of one of the other iconic things? There's so much that's iconic about Star Wars in our eyes, but also iconic in terms of general population and cinema. you've heard the music, I'm sure, many times before
Mm-hmm.
ever seeing the movie. What did you think of the score in this? Because this is John Williams, who's done everything: Jaws, E.T., Jurassic Park, Harry Potter, to say just a few. There's so many more beyond that. What did you think of the music throughout this?
Yeah, no, I mean, the music is obviously great. You know, there were multiple moments, obviously Imperial March, things like that, but there were multiple moments during the movie where I heard something that I've definitely heard 1,000 times before and said, oh, like that's Star Wars, you know? I feel like the soundtrack and the music has a definite feel to it, where if you heard something like that outside, you would say, oh, okay, that's a Star Wars type thing, especially Imperial March and things like that you hear all the time. But yeah, I mean, it goes with the movie. I can see how it was very, you know, spacey, innovative at the time. And yeah, I mean, it fit right with the movie, and that was kind of cool to hear things that, you know, I've heard outside of watching the movie and then hear them in the actual film.
I've got a couple questions to wrap things up, but before I do, Chris, Ryan, anything else you want to ask Sam before he moves on to the second film that we're going to have him watch?
Well, yeah, I mean, when are you starting your own Star Wars podcast? It's clearly
Yeah,
it's going to
right.
be a life-changing thing. And
I was funny you should say that. I was actually texting somebody that I was going to do this, and she also doesn't she also said I will never watch Star Wars, and she also has seen no Marvel movies, like totally like I was totally against it, not something she's going to like. And she was like, that, you know, that sounds horrible. So no, there will be no podcast. I enjoyed it, guys. I enjoyed
Good.
it. Am I coming away? Let's put it this way. Do I think, let's forget the fact that I fell asleep, okay? Am I coming away saying, oh my goodness, I'm going to watch this 10 more times? No.
Okay.
But
Because you're
I
gonna watch
enjoyed
it
it, and
30
I'm
more
happy.
times?
I enjoyed it. I'm happy I saw it, and I'm excited and looking forward to watching whatever's next. I'll say that.
That's all you could ask for.
Well, I think
Yeah.
this is an appropriate time to ask you, and we'll do this after each movie you watch. Star Wars fan check. Are you, on a scale of 1 to 10, what kind of Star Wars fan would you put yourself at after one movie? And we'll update this every time you watch one.
Where would I put myself after one movie? Scale of 1 to 10. You know what? I'll put myself at a 6.
That's not
I'll
bad.
Yeah,
go
that's
one
something.
more.
That's
I mean,
good starting out.
Again, I really enjoyed it. Like, nothing bad to say about it. I found it interesting. You know, I think it also is a little bit different when you're watching something that you know is so popular and
Oh,
so
yeah.
beloved. I think it really, like, not that it puts pressure on you to like it, but I think you go in with a very, very different mindset about it than when you're just watching something totally random. But I'd say
Without
a
a
6,
doubt.
Mike. I'd say a 6. A solid
that's a
6.
strong-
Giving it a
respectable.
shot.
I mean, are you
enjoyed it.
excited for 10 more of these?
Yeah, I mean, you know, again, you know what the hard thing is? The hard thing is that I'm excited to see the next one. I will say it is so not my nature to sit there in a living room for 2 hours watching a movie. Hold on, how long are how long are they usually? Like 2 hours or more?
2:15. I'd say
Okay.
the average is 2:15.
So there's
To me,
9
that's
movies.
long.
Yeah.
So like that part of it, honestly, like is kind of I'm kind of there is a part of me that dreads.
Well, this is why we have
that
Krista.
part of
This is having
Right.
Krista there to keep
Right.
you in check and keep you
Right.
watching. I mean, I may or may not have given her a payment on the side to make sure that you were.
Hey, Mike,
really
that was all of our
competing.
budget. Thank you.
But let's ask then, as we wrap up our first conversation, what do you think is going to happen in the next movie? Because as to let you know, the first movie was made. There was intention for a larger story. They did not know
Right.
they'd get to tell the larger story. Because this came
Right.
in as no expectation. No one knew what was coming when this movie came out. No one thought it would be a hit. It was actually turned down by several studios. They didn't even want to make the movie.
The creator, George
Interesting.
Lucas, literally was packing his bags to leave to Hawaii during the premiere date because he thought it'd be such an epic failure.
Wow.
So with that in mind, what do you think is going to happen next for these characters? And we leave them, they've destroyed the Death Star. Darth Vader is still alive, still out there. And the three of them, Leia and Han and Luke, have clearly developed a relationship. What do you think happens next?
So the title of the next one is Empire Strikes Back, right?
Yes.
I don't know. Well, the Empire must,
from that title,
quote unquote, strike back. Well, I do know from the research that I've done, after I watched, that the next movie is where Darth has the big line, right?
Yes.
Okay, I know that already, and there's no reason in hiding that. I already know that. So I know there's going to be some meeting that's dramatic between him and Luke. I would assume that he's in somewhat of a position of power to be able to say that. I don't know. I guess my prediction, if the title is The Empire Strikes Back, this movie ended where the good guys won, and it was to be continued. Maybe the Empire and the bad guys win the next one, and it ends like that.
Sam, did you do a lot of research? How much research did you do?
Yeah, I don't even think you really need to watch it.
No. I did not. I did. My research was reading the plot of this first movie. That was my research after I watched to fully understand what I just watched and who was who and get a better idea. Because I will say, when I watched it early on and when I finished it, I had questions about everything I saw. In which is probably fairly common. So I read the Wikipedia plot. I did not read anything about Empire Strikes Back. The only thing I know about that movie, just again from looking after, because I was shocked that it didn't happen in the first one because I kept waiting for it.
Waiting after the credits.
The only thing I know about it is that line is in that movie. That is the only thing I know.
It'd be funny if there was like a Wikipedia page that had a list of all the Star Wars movies and then just who wins them.
Right.
I like that.
Well, we appreciate the time you've put in already. We're excited for you to watch the next one. And thank you for doing the research and really thinking about this. This is a great conversation. It's fun to hear your first time going through it, and we're glad that you enjoyed it and didn't feel like it was a waste of your time. Because if it got to that point, I'd be like, all right, let's reconsider before we try to make you watch 9 of these.
And if you watch the side movies, you only have 25 hours of movie left.
Thank you for a full day of your life. That's
No, I'm looking forward to the next one. I think this is a good exercise. If only for the fact that I can make connections in my head, like the Jedi mind tricks thing.
There you go.
That was an eye opener to me. I was like, I have literally said that before, having no clue of what it actually was, or where it comes from. So I'm excited for it, and I think it's again, we talked about this, Mike, on the first one. I think it's a good thing for me. I think it's a way for me to grow and learn a couple of things here. So I think it's good.
Who knows? That Star Wars fan meter might just creep up a little bit.
You're already looking stuff up after the movie. It's
that's
happening.
true.
That's what happens.
Well, I will say you have the baseline now. You, especially even reading back of what you had from the first movie, that the next two are going to be easy for you to track who everyone is, because it's the story that continues. You're not going to be quite the world a little bit more. So I think that'll certainly help a little bit as you watch those next two. But Sam Levitt, thank you so much for joining us. Follow him on Twitter at SammyLev. Check out his broadcasts. He's out there doing college basketball, baseball in the spring. Sam, we can't wait to have you back to talk about The Empire Strikes Back.
All right. I'm looking forward to it. Oh, don't forget about TikTok. Okay.
Oh, of course.
Very, very important. All right.
And Sammy Levitt.
Yeah, Sammy Levitt, and look, I had a cool 3 million views on a TikTok this weekend, so I got to get the TikTok out there, guys.
Well, hey, Sam,
time.
We're not quite in getting those numbers, but Droids Pod's on TikTok.
We're looking to get the Levitt bump.
You might.
We've got at Droids Pod, and I will tell you, I don't want to give away too much here, because I do feel like you might end up just finding a huge audience for it, and then we're going to feel like we just lost it on the podcast. There's a lot of first reactions to Star Wars movies on TikTok where people talk about having never seen it before, and they do very well. They do very well.
Interesting.
So if you want to do that and mention you're going to talk more about it on the Droids, you're
all right,
welcome to. Not going to twist your arm, but
we'll see. We'll see how far we get.
Well, Sam, thanks again, and we'll talk to you about The Empire Strikes Back soon. Guys, that was fun. That was nice to have a fresh point of view on the podcast, and fresh point of view in general. I mean, how many times do you talk to anybody who hasn't seen Star Wars? And if you do, it's casual. You don't say, I guess I'm going to force you to watch this movie now, and then you have to tell me what you think. This is the power of a podcast. You can force someone to watch a movie.
I usually make a point of not talking to people who haven't seen Star Wars, but I'm glad that I've done it now.
Yeah, no, it was definitely refreshing. It's cool to see someone that's still, there's a veil of mystery of what's going on, and to see someone figuring that out still, it's pretty cool.
It was hard for me to not be like, you're going to learn all about the Force.
I know, I was
like, you're gonna hear it, yeah.
It was very difficult not to release certain things or to be like, well, just wait and see.
I mean, if you thought that was boring, you're not going to think this is boring. Wait until you see this stuff.
Exactly.
Why don't you just have us watch you watch it?
I was resisting, to have to defend anything, but no, we're going into this. This is him watching it first time. Wherever he lands, we'll accept.
We'll have to accept.
I think there's plenty of people who might be taken aback and put off by a bit. Hey, everybody's got different experiences. Everybody's got different things going on in their lives, and it's nice to hear somebody who doesn't know all of it. And even if they don't love a character you love, even if they weren't blown away by Darth Vader, that's fine. That's actually, I'm excited to see how he feels about Vader as it goes, because that's going to be cool to me to watch that develop. As he sees the way that character changes, and who he is later on in the prequels.
I think if you enjoy the first one, then you're really going to enjoy the second one.
He called it a bit, didn't he?
Yeah,
he really did.
He's got an inside track on it. Well, we'll look forward to our next conversation about The Empire Strikes Back with Sam. Guys, that's pretty much going to do it for this edition of the pod. We're going to get back to it. We should probably have said this at the early outset of the episode. Maybe we might want to do a drop-in, Ryan. Oops. The High Republic, Light of the Jedi, we will keep reading that. That was just a 1-week break for you after finishing part 1. So we'll continue to have that conversation as we go forward in our next podcast. But wanted to get this other conversation in, talk about the news with Gina Carano. But guys, got to get back to Light of the Jedi and find out what happens after the Great Disaster.
The truth of the matter is none of us really did our homework. And we're not going to lie to you and try and write the paper anyway.
You can say we only have one copy of the book and we pass it around. We mail it to each other.
Being that we're socially distanced and we live in different cities, the post office is overwhelmed right now.
Right.
Especially with Valentine's Day coming up, of course.
Oh, I thought you were going to say overwhelmed with other people doing the same thing we are. It's just all shipments of Light of the Jedi.
I saw a USPS truck the other day riddled with copies of the High Republic of people just sending them back and forth. So, obviously we appreciate that they're doing that, and hopefully it doesn't interrupt anyone's Valentine's gifts getting there in time.
If your Valentine's gift isn't High Republic Light of the Jedi, well, I don't know what you're doing with your time.
We should have
and
merch
hey, if
for
you
this
want
kind
us
of
to
thing.
send a message of love to your Valentine, this is coming out on Friday, so you have 2 days to email us and hope we check it. And then next week we might mention it on the podcast.
Yeah, we can send your love a late Valentine's Day message.
I thought you were going to suggest that we just do a Cameo, that we all set up a Cameo account for the Droids.
Yeah, it'll be $800, and for us to do a Cameo to send to your loved one. Or someone you're trying to woo, but in an appropriate way, not in a gross, aggressive way.
I think that would put everyone over the top, right? That we would just, if you got a Cameo for this person you're trying to woo from us, I think that would put you over the top.
Yeah, and then in a few years we'd be ordained, and we'd
Oh, I'm ordained, sir.
You are?
Don't speak
so Mike can perform the wedding.
A Droids pod ceremony. Well,
I'll work in plenty of Yoda quotes.
I was gonna say, are you Life Day ordained?
Actually, yeah, it was the Church of something Life that I got ordained in when I performed a ceremony.
Wookiee Life.
I mean,
Church of Wookiee Life.
Yeah,
Star Wars weddings. Right in with your Star Wars wedding.
And listen, hey, so all of the droids are either married or soon to be married. So
Wink.
we're not foreigners to the language of love. You know what I mean? Wow. Okay. Okay. Jeez Louise.
Oh boy.
Did my wife call you guys?
Yeah, did you? Hey Ryan, you realize we're on a Star Wars podcast?
On that note, please join us again. We'll see how our Valentines collectively go and how yours goes, and if we have a shout out to do.
I'm going the way of Gina Carano after this, aren't I?
That's it.
I'm getting fired off the pod.
Yeah. It's
If you haven't been fired by now,
Mike and Sam's new podcast.
Ryan's comments about being familiar with the language of love were absolutely abhorrent.
Abhorrent. I don't know. I can't speak.
I'm right there with you, Chris. I was really worried about saying that. That will do it for the Droids You're Looking For, a Star Wars podcast. Join us next week as we continue on in our journey through the galaxy far, far away.
What Annie?
I'm Ronald Araki, and this is my partner, Ed Horn.
I was really worried about saying that. It's an alternate title for this podcast.